Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this introductory session conducted by Lex Indus Law Offices on prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. Lex Indus is a boutique law firm. Four founding partners, myself Ajay Tandon, Sunil Gandhi, Saran Suri, and Manjula Gandhi, along with our senior consultants and associates, have a combined professional experience of over 400 years dealing with legal nuances and providing solutions, including matters relating to POSH. POSH Act and its varied implications cannot be covered in one session. For today, we have our senior partner, Mrs. Manjula Gandhi, with three associates, Kritika, Seema, and Soumya, who will focus on the meaning of the words sexual harassment. The other aspects of compliances, the way ahead, and the like would be taken up in our next sessions to be held shortly. During today's discussion, our viewers are welcome to write their questions or queries in the Q&A box, which will be taken up towards the end of the interaction. The panelists will endeavor to address as many questions as possible, but if due to paucity of time, they are unable to do so, please send your questions and valuable feedback on our email ID webinar@lexindus.com and we will respond. Over to Manjula ma'am and the team.
Thank you, Ajay sir. Welcome to this introductory session on POSH. I just want to share with you a very small childhood experience, which I believe every woman or girl must have experienced once in a while. I was raised with three elder brothers. Boys being boys used to play pranks. Most of the time, I used to participate with them. But very often, my mother and grandmother used to stop me by saying, "Tum ladki ho, tum nahi kar sakti." The rebellious child within me would immediately react and say, "Kyun? Main kyun nahi kar sakti? Do I lack in ability, capability or competence?" वही चार वर्ड का जवाब मिलता था, कह दिया ना, बस. My quest continued for years. I was in college when I was going through a news report on rape. Immediately a question came into my mind. Why is it always a woman is a rape victim and not a man? This question was self-contained. It had the answer which I was searching for years. It's because it's the dignity of the women which is lowered, and who faces the wrath and suffers the humiliation not only at the hands of the society but from her own family, despite the fact that she is the subject. So that is the reason why woman is a weaker section and is subjected to sexual harassment.
Manju ma'am,
yes,
just an observation before we move forward.
Sure.
As you said, like in India, it is so common, like with you, like with us, that we are prohibited by our families or parents for our own good, apprehending that something wrong will happen to us. But even in the foreign countries, the Western culture doesn't really have these sort of prohibitions. However, even females outside are subjected to cases of sexual exploitation or sexual harassment.
You are absolutely right, Kritika, in that sense. Sexual harassment, as you may say, is just like a coronavirus. It's pandemic. It has impacted women all over the world at workplace. Be irrespective of their status, their culture, their class, their vocation, they are impacted. The only difference lies in the degree of impact, which is due to cultural disparity. So all over the world, women are impacted. How can you forget that even White House was not an exception? Even at Google's, there are cases of sexual harassment. So it has nothing to do with the country, culture, region or something. So हमारे एक राजा महाराजाओं के टाइम पे एक बहुत मशहूर कहावत होती थी, जाकी तिरिया सुंदर देखी तापे जा धरी तलवार. So it's a universal phenomenon. It has nothing to do with country, region, culture, etc. So this is what I was about to say.
Ma'am, sorry
Yes.
to intervene, but जैसे अभी आपने childhood का experience बताया अपना, that every girl probably would have felt and heard such and such statements from his or her parents. So ma'am, what do you think, is sexual harassment a contemporaneous issue, or is it something which is prevalent in the modern times only, या फिर पहले की भी women were exploited and they were sexually harassed?
ये तो सदियों से ही चलता आ रहा है बेटे. Even during the epic era of Ramayana and Mahabharata, women who used to work as dasis and devdasis in palaces and temples, they were also subjected to sexual abuse and exploitation by the king and priest. The only difference was that they would never raise their voice for the fear that they will be outcasted by their own families. It is only when the social activism was on the rise and media became prominent that in the year 1997, when a social worker was gang raped in Rajasthan, a NGO initiated a class action before the apex court. And the Honorable Supreme Court for the first time introspected and realized that there are no preventive and corrective measures to provide a safe and congenial workplace to women. So at that time, a committee was constituted with the aid of eminent lawyers who formulated guidelines, which were popularly known as Vishakha Guidelines, and which ultimately culminated into POSH Act in the year 2013. POSH Act, as you all know, is a self-contained act. It not only deals and explains what exactly is sexual harassment, but it also provides for a redressal mechanism. Today, the companies, organizations all over the world are facing these concerns. So today, in this first introductory session, we are only considering the first aspect, which is what exactly is sexual harassment and why it is imperative for the organizations to have POSH to have POSH in the organization. So Seema, please explain why it is imperative for the organizations to have POSH.
Yes, ma'am. As Manju ma'am has given the introduction of POSH Act, now let us understand why this act is important for any organization. Whenever we discuss about any sexual harassment incident of any organization, do we remember the name of the victim or do we remember the name of the harasser? The answer is no. But everybody remembers the name of the organization. For example, Wipro, Infosys, Uber, Air India, सबको ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का नाम याद रहता है, किसी को हैरेसर, विक्टिम, इनका नाम नहीं पता. So here this act comes into the picture to safeguard companies' reputation. The most effective weapon against the sexual harassment is prevention, which this act provides through the sexual harassment training. It is also a legal mandate now, and in case the organization do not conduct any kind of sexual harassment training, they also have to go through the penal actions. Even those organizations who do not have even a single female employee, still they have to comply with this act. So here we are to tell you what is this act all about. Today we are covering three important aspects: what, where, who. What is sexual harassment, what is workplace, and who are the parties involved. Let's say there's an officer who asks his employee for a date and she says no. Would that amount to sexual harassment? Or what actually constitutes sexual harassment? Let us understand this from Soumya.
Ji Seema ma'am, because you've initiated about sexual harassment, it is important for everyone to understand it in simple words, and I'll try that only. But before that, I believe most of you all here will agree with me that we spend a considerable part of our day in the offices and in the organizations that we work for. And you know, there are certain times when we do not feel comfortable while working, or we feel like running out of the office. So this kind of discomfort can be attributed to various reasons, you know. It could be due to the work pressure, it could be due to the organizational policies, the work environment around us, and it can also be because of the behavior of the people who work with us. So the POSH Act targets these kind of situations only, where a woman does not feel comfortable while she is working, or she does not enjoy a congenial working environment. And that is why I believe that the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act is such an imperative tool for any organization for the protection of their women employees. But this tool will be rendered absolutely useless, and this tool, which is now a legal remedy also, it will be of no use if the organization does not know how to effectively use it or what is its importance. So that is why sexual harassment is something which is a subjective matter, and it can vary from person to person, right? So coming to what exactly sexual harassment is, it is any kind of unwelcome behavior towards the women which has a sexual connotation attached to it, and which either makes the women feel uncomfortable or it leaves a bad impact on her, right? So the most important consideration for any behavior to constitute as sexual harassment is the presence of the sexual connotation. The kind of behavior can be of various types, and it can vary from person to person, as I said, but I have certain examples here through which I'll be able to explain the meaning. For example, I have a senior in my organization, and one day, because of my good work, he comes up to me, he tries to pat on my back, or he offers a handshake. And this kind of physical advance which is there towards me, it will not constitute as sexual harassment, because it is a sweet gesture, or an recognition of my good work. But if that senior person regularly comes up to me or tries to touch my back or tries to touch my hand, which does not make me feel comfortable, or I feel reluctant towards it, so that physical advance will constitute as sexual harassment. Secondly, if suppose I wear certain kind of clothes to the office one day, and I hear certain people commenting on my clothes behind my back saying कि पता नहीं कैसे कपड़े पहन के आई है, she is not looking good. So this kind of a comment can be humiliation to me, but it will not be sexual harassment per se, because it does not have any sexual remark. However, suppose I hear some lewd comments on either the shape of my body or on my personal character, saying कि अरे ये तो जानबूझ के ही कपड़े ऐसे पहनती है because she wants to attract men in the office. So the presence of the sexual remark in the comment, that will constitute as sexual harassment, and it will be punishable. Thirdly, I have another example that suppose if I'm asked by my boss to stay late in the office one day because I have to complete a certain urgent assignment. And while I complete it, he offers me to drop me back home. So firstly, asking a women employee to stay late in the office after the working hours, if it is because of an urgent work, it will not be sexual harassment. Secondly, if he's asking me to drop me back home, is a sweet gesture, of course, and that has nothing as objectionable. However, if suppose on the way back that person asks me to spend the night with me, and when I refuse, he threatens me कि मैं तुम्हारे बारे में पूरे organization में rumors फैला दूंगा if you don't give in to my request. So the threat that the woman is put to if she does not give in to the sexual demand, that again is sexual harassment. Lastly, we can also take the example of the organizations and the MNCs, which these days have a culture of organizing outstation trips and unofficial parties for their employees to make them know and to make them understand and know each other well. So any untoward or untoward incident or a mishap which may happen with a woman during that party or during that office trip, which despite she explicitly saying no to it, continues and she has to face it, then that is again punishable as sexual harassment under the Act. So, these are some of the most prevalent and ordinary circumstances which a woman faces while she's at work. And all these makes her working environment, hostile and intimidating, and it is not comfortable for a woman to work there, right? So,
Soumya,
Hanji.
I understand sexual favor is sexual harassment, but suppose any officer in return of any sexual favor offers any benefit, like I will hire you, I'll give you a promotion, or I'll give you any big project, would that also amount to sexual harassment?
Certainly, Seema ma'am, because I think आपने काफी pertinent issue पे question किया, because this kind of sexual harassment is the most common these days, and it is because of the organizational hierarchy. And this is a special kind of sexual harassment which is known as quid pro quo sexual harassment. The Latin maxim means this for that. And it is any kind of a situation or a circumstance that a woman has to face in regards to if she's given an advantage to her employment, she's offered basically an advantage, or she's given a threat to her employment when she does not accept any sexual demand or a favor. So जैसे आपने बोला कि if a woman is told कि your salary will be hiked or you'll get an appraisal, or you'll be promoted to a new level if you sleep with me or you spend the night with me. So this is what sexual quid pro quo sexual harassment. And on the other hand, there can also be a threat to her employment, saying ki you will not get enough opportunities to grow in the organization, or you will be demoted, or you will have to face a salary cut if you do not accept my sexual requests. So again, a threat or a favor which a woman is offered if she does not accept to a sexual demand is quid pro quo sexual harassment, and is again punishable under the act. So I hope this answers your question.
Yes, Soumya, but I have another doubt.
Ji.
There are many incidents where the sexual harasser says that his intention is not wrong, his intention was not bad.
Right.
So then what's the point to report any kind of sexual harassment case?
So to cut into your conversation, Seema, you've raised a point that is a very important debate revolving the whole idea of sexual harassment at workplace. It's called the impact versus the intent debate. Like you rightly pointed out, and as Soumya has earlier explained, sending inappropriate stuff and conveying any any action that is not that makes the female uncomfortable will have a bad impact on her. So when the female goes to the organization to make any complaint, what will be seen is the impact of the action that the act has had on her, and not the intent of the accused. Because easily in like double meaning jokes or lewd comments, the person will come and say कि मैं तो मजाक कर रहा था या मेरा वो intention नहीं था. So because sexual harassment is a very subjective experience, to explain by an example would be say like in our organizations, we have male colleagues as friends. And it may be normal for male colleagues to come and hug us as a form of greeting. But tomorrow if he goes and does that to a new associate or an intern that has just come in, she may take offense and want to report the same. So definitely the intention here will not matter, but the wrong impact that is had on the associate or the intern would be taken into consideration, especially at the time of filing of the complaint.
Ritika, I want to say something more to it.
Yes.
You know, the sexual harassment, there are certain acts, words, and gestures which may be taken in the normal parlance in certain cultures in certain countries, but they may tantamount to sexual harassment in a conservative country. So it is subjective to that extent also. That in certain countries, yes, it is just the normal thing. Certain things are taken to be very normal in certain cultures, but it is not so in other countries.
Correct,
So,
ma'am.
yeah.
So, ma'am, why go far? Even India has several cultures, and even if you see the work culture, I highly doubt that the work culture of a government office would be similar to the work culture of a private firm or a MNC for that matter. So, for that reason, it is very important to understand, even though there are certain statutory sections that explain what is sexual harassment, but there is no handbook saying exactly what words or what acts will comprise sexual harassment. So therefore that is why it is a very subjective experience, and as long as it has a sexual overtone and has a bad impact on the victim, it will definitely be considered to be sexual harassment. So with that in mind, we would like to now move on to the next topic, that is the where, which means what exactly comprises the workplace under the POSH Act. So basically any enterprise, any location, or basically any premises that a female frequents in the course of the business, which could also be an accommodation or transportation to and from work, will constitute a workplace under the POSH Act as per the definition.
Kritika, I was thinking of something कि जैसे आजकल everyone is working from their homes because of the present lockdown. And these days it is the work from home culture that is going on. So at present, our homes and our dwelling places is the place of work for us, right? So would you think that our homes will also be covered as workplace under the act?
So Soumya, that's a very interesting question, and of course, this lockdown has given a new legal meaning to the term workplace. So, but I would say that even though accommodations and dwelling houses can be workplaces, but in this case, these are not our places of work. However, any virtual means, any virtual medium that we use to communicate officially, could be this webinar, could be an email, could be a WhatsApp, any medium, virtual medium, if it is used to send out any message inappropriately, would definitely be covered as a workplace under the act. And the same, the virtual medium being a workplace has also been held to be a workplace by the Honorable High Court of Delhi in a judgment.
Okay, but I also feel ki because you've talked about certain mediums of communication, so there are certain incidents also when women use these kind of mediums, and initially they consensually befriend their employees, and they generally start talking through that medium. So I believe ki un situations mein the women should not later come up and lodge a false complaint against the male employee or against her so-called friend, because it was her own consent that she has given to start the communication through that medium initially, and then she cannot just maliciously report an incident which probably does not have that effect.
Soumya, I think there are two parts to your question. Firstly, consenting to a friendship will, of course, not consent to person sending something inappropriately.
Right.
However, the second part, if he hasn't sent anything inappropriately and you initiate the conversation and misuse the act, then definitely misuse under the act is wrong for any law being misused.
Yeah.
And as you would already know, like under the POSH Act, the ICC, if they find a complaint to be frivolous or malicious, they can take an action on that as well. So I
Correct.
hope that answers both parts of your question.
Yeah, but lastly, one another thing. Uh, so we have our housemaids and domestic helps coming to our houses, for work. उनके लिए हमारा घर is the place of work or the workplace, as you've said. So do you think that these domestic helps and women can also seek protection under this POSH Act?
Soumya, may I answer your question?
Ji, Hanji.
Yes, these domestic workers are also protected under this act. And for that, we need to understand one term, that is aggrieved woman. Who's an aggrieved woman as per this act? An aggrieved woman is a woman in relation to a workplace who alleges to have been sexually harassed. This act covers every woman, whether they are employed or not, irrespective of age, work status. Even she is working in the capacity of permanent, temporary, ad hoc, daily wage basis, engaged directly or indirectly through any agent. Either she is on remuneration or working as a volunteer, or her employment contract is implied or expressed, even though she is protected under this act. For example, an intern joins a law firm, and if she is sexually harassed by any of the employee of that firm, can she seek protection under this act? The answer is yes. Even though she does not have any expressed contract with the firm, even then she can take protection under this act.
Seema,
Yes, ma'am.
but I believe even a visitor can be an aggrieved woman under the act.
Right, right.
Suppose a sales girl visits our office to promote the sale of her company's goods. While she is there, somebody from our office abuses her, sexually abuses her, or misbehaves with her. Then, for that matter, our office is her workplace and she is a aggrieved woman, though she is neither an employee nor she is being harassed by a colleague or the employer. So a perpetrator also need not be an employer or a colleague. He can be a third person. So for that matter, that's what I'm trying to say, that aggrieved woman need not be an employee of the organization.
Yes, ma'am. That's why the freelancer, probationer, trainee, apprentice, they all are also covered under this act and protected.
Yes.
As you used one term, that is perpetrator. Now the question is, like, who is a perpetrator? Perpetrator is a person who commits any sexual harassment act, whether at the workplace or any extended workplace wherein the aggrieved woman comes into his contact. For example, renting cab for daily commute purpose is a common practice of the workplace, and recently there have been instances where passengers were harassed by the driver. As insides of the cab, there is an extension of the workplace, and it is the duty of an employer to ensure the safety of the women commuting the ride. So here the cab driver will be constituted as the perpetrator. So now we have seen that who's an aggrieved woman and who's a perpetrator. Now it's time to see who is an employer under this act. In case of any government undertaking, establishment, unit, branch, it's the head of that place. For example, in bank, the bank manager, the branch officer of the bank will be an employer. In case of private workplaces, the person who is responsible for the management, supervision, or the control of that workplace. Like in MNCs, it's the senior management or the person who formulates any policy or who is responsible for the administration of that place is an employer as per this act. The thirdly, like we hire maid or any domestic worker at our place. So in that case, and for them, we are the employers. So basically, the employer is a person who manages or supervises that workplace. An employer has a very important duty that is to protect and provide a safe working environment to the women. Apart from that, he has other several duties like constitution of ICC, where the victim can file her complaint, and also to organize regular workshops and awareness programs for sensitizing employees, to assist ICC or monitor it, notify, circulate, display at any conspicuous place in workplace the penal consequences of sexual harassment.
Seema, there are two more duties which an employer must ensure that the women at the workplace are duly respected by the co-employees and the employer, that they should get respect. He has to create such an environment where women are respected. And the second and the foremost is that an employer has to ensure that there is a balance in the organization, so that even the women who are working in the organization should not take this redressal mechanism as a tool, as a vindictive tool. It should not be misused by them. No false and frivolous complaint should be filed against the male colleagues. So that is also to be seen. That
Yes,
balance
ma'am.
is also to be maintained by the employer.
And add on to the employer has also to support the woman who chooses to file any complaint before
Very true.
under IPC or any other law for the time being. As I said, the constitution of the ICC is an important and major duty of an employer, which is a redressal mechanism of sexual harassment at the workplace and a necessary obligation under the POSH Act. Any complaint filed by the aggrieved woman to the ICC has to be decided as per the statutory norms and the procedures provided under this act. This part, the redressal mechanism, will be covering in our next segment of this POSH series. So for the time being, this we are restricting here. And now I would like to invite Manju ma'am to conclude this presentation.
Thank you, Seema. Before I come to conclusion, I think through this introductory session, we tried to explain to you and dispel the myths which are prevailing and looming in the minds of the people at the organization or all the concerned. So before I conclude, I would just like to recapitulate what we have explained in this session of ours. We have explained what exactly constitutes sexual harassment. It's not every act which tantamounts to sexual harassment. So it has to be certain acts which can be said to be acts of sexual harassment and how they are said to be committed. So there are 5 components. First component is the act. The second component is the person. Person includes 2 things. Person means an aggrieved woman who is the subject of the sexual harassment, as well as the perpetrator. So perpetrator is the person who commits the acts of sexual harassment on the aggrieved woman. So there are 2 elements in person. So now the 4th element is the place. Place means the workplace. So workplace is not confined to the 4 bounds of the office premises. It it has an extended meaning. So it can extend to any other place where the woman has gone in response to her performing her official duties. And the fifth element is the time when the said act is said to be committed. So we cannot say that the acts committed during the working hours, normal working hours of the organization will be covered under sexual harassment acts. No, that is a wrong myth. All the acts, even though committed after the working hours, that is 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, but during the discharge of the official duties. Suppose a woman is traveling on air and she's going to some place to attend a conference. And during the time she's traveling, she is performing her official duty. And if some of her colleague misbehaves with her on the flight, although it is beyond the working hours, still that time would be the time when the said act is said to be committed. So now I just take you all to the question answers round. So please, Seema, begin the question answer round, please.
Ma'am, before we begin the question answer round, I would just like to point out 3 points that will help the people understand what we will be covering in our subsequent sessions, and also how Lex Indis or lawyers and law firms can help them for the POSH Act.
Right.
So firstly, it is very important for the organizations to comply with all the statutory provisions under the POSH Act. A detailed composition of the ICC and all the statutory compliances will be covered in our subsequent sections. Secondly, it is very important for the organizations not just to comply with the law, but also to understand, the people in the organization to understand if they had an employee come to them with a particular case of sexual harassment, how exactly to deal with it. And thirdly, in case an organization is not able to properly deal with a case of sexual harassment, and like Seema had pointed out in the beginning, the people will remember the name of the organization. So quad that, it is very important for the organizations to know how to minimize the loss of reputation in such cases. So with that, Seema, please take over for the question and answer.
Yes, let's take the question. Kritika, the very first question is for you. Ascertaining an act of sexual harassment is always a difficult task. How can one ascertain that a specific act is sexual harassment by giving benefit of doubt to the offender and without risking the interest of the victim?
Seema, as to the second part of the question, I don't see why it is important to give any benefit of doubt to the perpetrator, because as we had read in the impact versus intent debate, it is the impact of the act on the victim that matters. And as has been explained by Soumya in her What is Sexual Harassment portion, if the act has any sexual overtone, then it definitely will be an act of sexual harassment. And I don't think any benefit of doubt needs to be given to the accused. And with the material available on record, the committee will have to reach a decision on that.
Very well, Kritika. There's another question. If any woman is sexually harassed by her colleague, how can she deal with the harassment? Manju ma'am, please answer this.
In this case, we will be discussing all these things in our next session. But for that matter, I'll just answer in brief that she will have to file a complaint, a written complaint, taking into consideration the act which is being committed, and that written complaint will be filed before the organization and would be dealt with by the IC. So that we will be discussing in our next session.
Yes, that will be covering in our next session.
Aspect and the challenges with all the organizations and the compliances which they have to follow, that would be taken care in the next session.
So the most welcome. We invite you for the next session as well. Now the next question is whether the organization is liable for all the misconducts or harassments happened even after the working hours. Soumya, you can please answer this question.
Anji. So I will take from what Manju ma'am has already explained, that the organization will not be responsible for anything and everything that is happening after the official hours. So if the moment the woman steps out of the office and it is the end of her official duties and the official capacity, anything and everything that will happen to her in her personal capacity, the organization will not be responsible for her. However, if, as Manju ma'am has given the example, if she's traveling or she's going for a conference or she's present in some meeting or something, and if any untoward incident happens to her during that time, but because she is in the official capacity and she is the part of the organization, then that will definitely constitute a sexual harassment, and the organization will be responsible to it, but not for everything in her personal capacity.
Okay, now the another question. For Manju ma'am, why is POSH only thought of as law for the prevention of sexual harassment of female employee at workplace? What about the sexual harassment of men? We know of the Me Too campaign and cases where judges, advocates, or even court clerks were harassed in the High Court by women.
So there are other legislations. This is a legislation which is specifically for the women. So there are other remedies, other legislations which provide for their redressal. So this is this enactment is gender specific, only for the women who are harassed at the sexual harassment which is being subjected to them at the workplace. So with respect to men, I do agree, but this legislation does not cover them. So they have other remedies, they can take recourse to other remedies, not to this. And even throughout, you have seen it is the women who is being suffering at the workplace. The sexual harassment is being caused to her. And there are other enactments also, which are Domestic Violence Act and other enactments which are in favor of the women only.
Right.
It's not that the men do not have recourses available to them. They do have.
So basically, it's very subjective thing to say that POSH Act is the biased or it is only for the protection of the women.
It is gender specific, that's true, but you cannot say it's a biased act. There are other remedies, there can be other policies in the organization which can protect the interest of the male workers. It's not that there can't be anything, there is a bar that there can't be any policies or the enactments in favor of the men.
Very well, ma'am. Soumya, there's one question and it's a situational question. What is it in office meeting, a client or a vendor is trying to touch a woman employee in spite of repeatedly requesting him to back off? Does this also amount to sexual harassment at work, even though the offender is not employed with the company?
Yes. So if the vendor or the any client who's visiting the organization, even when he is not a part of the organization, but we should understand that the woman is in her official capacity. As I've always said, women is present there as the employee, she's a part of the organization, and any person, अब ऐसे तो कोई भी हो सकता है, कोई client हो सकता है, कोई customer हो सकता है, कोई delivery boy हो सकता है, any person who enters the office and does any act which makes the women feel uncomfortable, and जैसे आपने बोला that she is resisting to such physical advances, तो anything or any person, even though he's not a part of the organization and he does any wrong thing to the women, it will definitely be called as sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Kritika,
Yes.
There's one question. With the change of definition of workplace and work from home being the new normal, do you see any change of scenario and legal aspects, new definitions of sexual harassment, especially in virtual working environment?
Yes, Seema. I think even though we've covered this question in our
Right.
work from home segment, I just like to reiterate that all the virtual mediums that we work through and use to communicate with the official people during this work from home time, if any medium is used to send anything inappropriately, that will come within the definition of the workplace. And it has already been held earlier in a case by the Honorable High Court of Delhi. And in such a situation, a complaint can also be made virtually to your organization or to the ICC or to the local committee, whichever is applicable in your case.
Manju ma'am, there is one question
Yes.
specifically asked to you. What are your views on the UGC prevention, prohibition, and redressal of sexual harassment of women employees and students in higher educational institutions
Mhm.
regulation wherein it set forth that sexual harassment is gender neutral and that male students are just as vulnerable to sexual harassment as their women or transgender counterparts?
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Or make divide it into parts so that it's
Right.
easy to answer?
What are your views on the UGC
Yes.
prevention, prohibition, and redressal of sexual harassment of women employees and students in higher education institutions? Regulations wherein it set forth that sexual harassment is gender neutral and that male students are just as vulnerable to sexual harassment as their women or transgender counterparts.
I think you are absolutely right. This is a point of great concern in the present scenario, where even the male are subjected to harassment. So in this scenario, I think there needs to be made certain reforms in that regard too. So sexual harassment needs an amendment in that regard. But that's what I feel. So it should be
Okay,
taken.
ma'am.
Legislation should take into consideration the change scenario where this type of allegations are coming from even the men. That it is not the women who is subjected to sexual harassment.
All right. Kritika, you were saying something?
Yes, Seema, just because I can see a lot of common question in the chat from a quick read, I would just like to answer. A lot of people had this question when we said that it is applicable to the domestic workers. Yes, POSH Act is applicable to the domestic workers, and as some of you have put a question regarding the ICC requirements. So in the case of domestic workers or an organization not having 10 employees, there are local committees that are formed under the act at a district level. So this we will be covering in detail in the next session, but I just wanted to clarify that domestic workers are very much covered under.
Right. They can complain before the local committees.
Yes.
There's Soumya, this question is for you. If a female employee wants promotion, but the boss says that you will not qualify for this promotion, and if she files a false complaint to the police, after this, how the boss can save or prove himself?
So I think that this is another incident of misusing the law by the women. As Manju ma'am and every one of us have discussed that a woman can file a complaint or can report an incident only if a sexual remark or a sexual behavior is made to her. The presence of sexual connotation, as I've said earlier, also is very important. So just because she is denied the promotion by the boss because of the qualification that she does not have, so she cannot just go and misuse the POSH Act to say that this person is unduly not promoting me to a level, but because she is not qualified for a promotion, so she should not be technically promoted also. So this is one incident where the women can misuse the law, and this is not acceptable, I would say.
There's one question. Can a woman be perpetrator? Like we have during our presentation said, this act is particularly to save the women only, and POSH Act does not cover the woman as a perpetrator. It's the men only. So I hope this question is already we have given the answer.
Women can't be under POSH Act.
Yes, under POSH Act they can
So we are
can't
not
be
today, we are
perpetrator.
only confining ourselves to the POSH Act.
Right.
So this question is not relevant for today's discussion.
There is one question. If the
Yes.
aggrieved woman is harassed in a cab by the cab owner while traveling to workplace, is the workplace liable in that case? Kritika?
If the cab is provided by the organization, not like Ola, Uber or something, but if the cab services are provided by the organization, then that will be an extended workplace in this context.
Right. There's one question. Is POSH training mandatory for an all-women workplace? Or is the third gender protected under this act? Kritika, can you please answer this?
Yes, POSH training is mandatory under the Act. Again, we will be covering this in detail in the next session.
As if I'm saying the
And sorry, I just like to add, and not only just an all women office. 10 employees
Women
can be all 10 can be males. If as long as there are 10
right.
employees in the office, POSH requirements have to be complied.
That's true.
And like I'm saying, many
Presence of
questions
women
are
is not required.
uh,
Presence of women in the organization is not a precondition for applicability of POSH.
Yes.
So that one thing has to be kept in mind by all the organizations.
uh, the next question is, what if the aggrieved woman initially participated in the sexual act, but she later on threatens the male about taking the recourse against the sexual acts of male? Will that be covered in POSH, Soumya?
No. So because we have, you have just said in the question that she consented for the sexual act initially, and then she is trying to lodge a complaint. So this will not be taken as a complaint under the POSH Act, because again, the consent of the women was there. It was her who had indulged into that act, and then again, this is another example of the misuse of the law,
Yes,
that later
right.
on she goes and lodges a false complaint against the male.
But
And this
for
is
that particular instance, like consent at one time is not consent for the next time. So
right, but for that
it's not in
incident, she
POSH.
cannot
This will
report.
be covered under other laws.
Yeah, but she cannot report that particular incident
Not
because
that
she is
not on
herself
that.
Basically, it will amount to misuse of this act.
correct, which the women
This is
should not.
where the employer has to maintain a balance.
Right.
Organization, that this act should not be used as a tool or weapon by the women employees against the men.
That
So
is why, ma'am, I feel that at the time,
all the things we would be discussing in the next session, where we would be
Right.
discussing about all these things.
Yes, like I have received few
ICS,
questions
other things.
which is related to the ICC. So I would like to inform that that part will be covering in our next segment. So for the time being, I'm just avoiding those questions. So
We'll answer those questions
in
after
the latest,
the session or through mails.
right.
So we will be answering. We would be reverting to them. Just take them on the mail and we would revert to them.
There's one question. In a digital working era, if more than 10 freelancers work together, does POSH come into play?
Yes.
Kritika?
Because as you yourself have said, under the definition of aggrieved women, freelancers are considered to be employees, and therefore, if there are 10 or more employees, be it male or female, then the requirements of the POSH Act, even in the virtual world, will apply.
Very well. There's one question. Sexual harassment by a female to a female in the organization. Will this be covered under the POSH? Manju ma'am?
No, it is not so.
Yes.
Only by the male colleagues, which is
Male
coming
employee to the
to a
female.
woman, a
Right.
man to a woman.
Right.
That is covered under the POSH Act, not the
Right.
other.
Right.
So I think that we have answered more or less all the questions we could, and due to the paucity of time, if any question remains to be answered, please send us a mail as has been explained by sir in the beginning. I would now like to invite our senior partner, Mr. Saran Suri, for giving a vote of thanks.
Thanks, Kritika. I, on behalf of Lexindus Law Offices, thank everyone for having participated and attending today's session. I particularly thank the Lung Care Foundation for having made its platform available to us, which made this virtual conversation happen. I also congratulate the presenting team for using their practical experience and professional skills to make the presentation very succinct, clear, and practical, to have taken us through this intricate issue of POSH with considerable ease and clarity. As already informed that in the coming POSH sessions, we will be taking up remaining aspects and would be answering almost all queries that may have remained pending in even today's session. We will keep you all informed about future sessions, but in the meanwhile, look forward to having your responses and suggestions. We also look forward to deal professionally with those facing any problems or having any connected issues. Thank you and goodbye.